Well, happy Tuesday. It's good to see everybody. Today, I am so excited that Martin Murphy, who has been on so many of our calls from the beginning, is going to share some of his work. He's the author of From Mercenaries to Missionaries. And today he's going to talk about how he approaches leadership and helping make it really simple, looking at people and lifestyles and discovery, looking at some different archetypal things that show up in ourselves, both the positive and that darker side. So with that, September 20th, I always like to plug the next one. September 20th, we are going to have our next call, same time. Zoom link will go out. I believe it stays the same. I'm going to cover the Inflation Reduction Act. A lot of folks are asking a lot of questions about that. My team is digging deeply into it. So we'll have an update on that and how that can impact us and the work that we do. And then in October, it sounds like we have a guest speaker who's going to speak a little bit about regenerative practices. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Martin. Take it away.
Thank you. Sharing screen. This is Matthew, by the way. He's going to be helping me possibly later. Just following on what Daniel said about where I've come from, basically. I ran away from a dysfunctional childhood and joined the military, and not being very good with authority, I always made sure that I ended up in small teams that are away from the main organization. So yeah, not wanting, a bit of a rebel without a clue when I was a kid. Since then, I've then gone on to develop teams for security teams around the world, either to protect high net worth individuals like David Beckham, American Airlines. I worked for them for a while. Before the pandemic, I was teaching intelligence agents leadership and team development out in the Middle East. And more recently, with fire, this is a cross tactical coordinating group here, which for the fire service. So my stuff has always been around leadership and team development. And I decided that we needed more information about leadership. We need better leadership, basically, because on the one hand, we seem to be, the tech optimists are saying the world's great. There's all this good stuff happening. And then the eco-pessimists are saying that the world's going to collapse. And most of us are kind of like, what's really going on? So Leonardo da Vinci said, simplicity is ultimate sophistication. So keep it sublimely simple. There's nothing stupid about simplicity. So I've been teaching leadership based on these principles, three principles of life leadership, which is it's liberating, it's inspiring, it's fair, and it's evolutionary. And after about a decade or so of looking at management models and things like that, they always fit into these 2x2s. You've got to understand people, you've got to understand life cycles and the process of discovery. And I'll go quickly through people and talk about life cycles and where that goes wrong, and also a bit of the discovery bit at the end, how it goes wrong. And to do that, we need to understand our history. Mostly when we talk about history, we go back, a few hundred, maybe 1,000 or so years. What we want to do is go back to when we were egalitarian hunter-gatherers. We're 95% chimpanzee DNA, but it really depends on that DNA is triggered in different ways, depending on the culture and society that you're in, the environment. But for 200,000 years, we lived in balance with nature. We're 99% Paleolithic, and it's only in the last 12,000 years when we've developed someone developed, probably a bloke, developed some technology, and we started getting technical hierarchical again. So really, it's like, what's next? And that's a cultural choice, really. So we've gone from this, in balance with nature, tend to dance a lot and have fun, to this. It's just a widget revolution. Basically, people want to turn people into widgets until they can replace them with technology. That's where we're heading. And there's something about hierarchy, and we need to understand what happens with that. So meet Boris. This is our, every former version of you is encapsulated within you. So if you're going to your parents, if you're ever been to your parents when you're an adult, and one of them starts nagging at you, your mother nags at you or something, and you start acting like a stroppy teenager, you can come back, you can go back to that former part of you. And we can do it in an evolutionary sense. And it happens when someone gets more bananas than anyone else. They turn into what I call our inner chump. They look like this. They come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. We've even got flying chumps in the UK. He's having trouble. He's flying around the world at the moment because to save him, kicking him out of number 10. And the thing about Boris is our inner chump is competitive and controlling. It's harmful to the ecosystem because it's driven by unconscious egocentric bias in its decision making, and it's motivated by fear and greed, and it's paradigm blind, and it suffers from paradigm inertia. Just try crossing your hands, folding your arms. And if you try to fold it the other way, what happens? Difficult, isn't it? That's because conscious thinking takes about 25% of our calories. And so everything, our behaviors and our thinking become very habitual. So that's what I mean about inertia. Once we've developed these threads in our brain, we don't like changing. And of course, we only see what we're programmed to see. What we see is like more a case of who we are. So we go from Homo sapiens to Homo Simpson as soon as we get threatened, and that's not really very good for us. And we can look at earlier archetypes. Archetypes have just evolved over time, depending on where we are. We used to call people hunter-gatherers, shamans, and scouts. Hunters, if we go through, our evolutionary reasons why they're like this, it explains the behaviors today. So hunters are usually predisposed to be risk tolerant because they have to be very focused when they're hunting something. Shamans, they're the keepers of the wisdom. They would advise people what berries to eat and that kind of thing. And it was really where to hunt and when to hunt and that kind of thing. And so for the shaman, it was really important that they get the information right, because if they told you to eat a certain berry, you could end up dead, or the wrong mushroom, you'd be having a long weekend, which was a bit strange. And so that's why they are more into certainty than anything else. The hunters are very focused because you can't be too worried about what's happening, so they don't mind a bit more risk. The gatherers, they produce most of the work, and they nurture and support the community. The scouts, well, you can't interbreed too many times, so scouts would go out and find new communities, and as a result of that, they have to be outgoing and able to break down social barriers and meet other people, so we can trade and barter with other people. So modern team styles, you might call it, performance drivers, they're passionate. The cultural supporters, they're more compassionate, and technical developers are people that they like the detail, they can work hard on their own, they like to complete a job, they don't like going back to finish it. Performance drivers, they just want to get the job done. Creative champions are really good at challenging the status quo, coming up with creative ideas and then championing those ideas. So, basically you can see the hunter-gatherer, we're still in there, it's just changed over time. Your leadership style, we have founders that facilitate and discover. We have entrepreneurs that command and train people. It's more motivating and directing. Managers manage and mentor, and coaches coach and nurture people. The real challenge that we have when we talk about leadership, the real problem is not should a leader have these particular talents and skills. It's, anyone could be a leader. We've got a blend of all these inside us. What the problem becomes when we have overplayed strengths. If you're an entrepreneur and you react to things, if you overplay that too much, and again, this can be triggered. We have to realize that we need to own all this so we can understand it more. But given the right environment, and right situation, we could possibly go in any of these directions. So if you take it too far, the entrepreneurs or can then lead to psychopaths and they become the tyrants. If you reject the status quo, we call, if you get it in balance, then you're founders. If you take it too far, it can be narcissistic, and then they could be the vandals. They instigate challenges. And the cowards, well, if we refer to what other people say, we then, you take it too far. These are emotionally intelligent people, and they can then end up as sadists. These tend to be the quieter people. It's a funny thing about, if you've heard of serial killers, they're usually quiet. It's the neighbor next door who's really quiet, but actually got 15 bodies buried in the garden. But they also are cowards because they won't challenge the psychopaths and stuff like that. And whenever you talk about managers and bureaucrats and things like that, they can become very Machiavellian and even monsters if they take it too far. So there's a dark side to all of these. So first question, Chris, were you going to ask it?
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Do you want to go back one slide for us?
Yep.
So we thought we'd do a quick breakout, like a 5-minute breakout group in twos, in dyads. I think one group is going to have 3. And to just quickly share what you identify in the kind of the leadership styles, like the manage and mentor, command and train, facilitate, discover, coach and nurture. Where do you see yourself in the leadership style grid or design that Martin is sharing here? And then we'll probably leave this up, but go to the next slide. And then if you want to share a bit about where, and think of this more like where is the sort of dark side or shadow side of leadership. It can be your own shadow side or where you've been impacted by another leader that may show they showing up as tyrant, or they're showing up as a coward, or showing up as vandals. Like, just to see what for you you've experienced, or what you notice in your own behavior, potentially your own shadow leadership behavior. So why don't we go back? We're not going to be able to keep both of these slides up, but why don't you keep one? Oh, actually, when we go into breakout rooms, we're not going to be able to see it. But if you just want to just kind of take a look right now. So I'm seeing the manage and mentor, command and train, facilitate and discover, coach and nurture. Now, we may be using all of these styles at some point in time, but where do you naturally gravitate toward as a style? And then the other, I guess we'll just have to remember the other ones, is it was monsters, cowards, tyrants, and vandals. Monsters, cowards, tyrants, and vandals. So just even if you want to take a screenshot, you can do a screenshot with your computer. And so what we'll do is we'll go in, we're just going to go in for 5 minutes. It's going to be a quick one. And I'll set the timer. Let me just make sure the timer is at 5 minutes. There we go. And then we'll come back, and then Martin's going to continue on. All right. Any questions, comments before we go? Okay, I'm going to put you in your breakout rooms of 5 minutes, and we'll see you back here. Here we go. That was great. Martin, do you want to just take some shares or just keep going? What would you like?
We could take some shares.
Yeah.
Craig,
Yes. Who would like to, what you
I was going to say what Craig was telling me. Craig and I totally related to the American dream and how the American dream the UK followed, but the dream's turning into a myth, isn't it? That was interesting talk.
What'd you share, Craig? Do you want to share with all of us? Just
Yeah, I was just sort of sharing how, earlier in my career, I related to sort of one side of those diagrams, and through my career, it's been evolving, and it turned into sort of an age discussion, because I've been having even just a few years ago, and I couldn't have this kind of conversation with other friends and peers that are my age and complexion and so forth. But suddenly there's been this rise in occurrence of just frustration, that we were all promised this American dream, and it's just been steadily eroding from beneath us. And yeah, that's the gist of it.
yeah. Thank you, Craig. Anybody else want to share about their style or their leadership style and or their kind of shadow side of their leadership? Melanie, do you want to share? So I can call on you since I was in your group. Do you want to just share sort of where you landed?
Well, in terms of perhaps that more the first side, it talks about how I'd probably sit between sort of the coach and facilitator. My role in the role that I have at work lends itself naturally to that. So it's something that I'm doing most of the day. So it becomes sort of almost a way of being in a way. But I'd say that darker side is what I discussed in the group was perhaps I can be a bit overly reflective, want to just go back and check something too many times, think things through maybe a little bit too quick, and perhaps I just need to be a bit faster at making decisions.
Great. And then you were trying to decide if that was more the Machiavellian over-reflecting, or if it was even the coward of deferring.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Great. Thank you, Melanie. Cool. Any other comments? Otherwise, we'll keep rolling with Martin. Yeah, was that you, Marianne?
Yes, it was. I was just going to say, Bernie and I had a good brief chat. We figured out we were in similar areas on the cycle or on the wheel per se, and not on the inquiring. But when things get tough, I can get to the bossy. I call it this bossy pants. Get to the directing kind of thing. Because and yet to see it and go and not very good at it. So it's an interesting process. But Bernie said this is his first call, so I was give a shout out and welcome to the group as well. So
welcome, Bernie. Yeah, good to have you here. It's great. Yeah, thank you, Marianne. Yeah, I read. So you kind of resonated with the tyrant a bit. Is it? Yeah, me too. I mean, that was my number one. I just go right into kind of, I got the right way. Hey, let's just do it this way, and let's just cut all the time out by just doing it the way I think is the best way to do it. So good. All right. So what? Yeah, Martin, why don't we keep rolling, and then we'll have a chance for more sharings and all that. Yeah.
So hopefully, the American dream. I'm just about, if I can just. We'll talk about the American dream a bit more. So yeah, the dark
sorry,
side.
do you want to? Can you share your screen though? Did you want to?
Is it not sharing? Hold on,
no, it's not. Yeah, just hit a double click.
How's that?
There we go. Yeah.
Got it?
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about this to try and identify where we are, and also understand about the fact that we can over-identify with these things, and that's where we start having problems. So life cycles, I mentioned earlier, sorry, I've had to switch from one, having a technical problem here. Yeah, got it back. So life cycles, we're going through all these life cycles, and obviously there are micro, macro, and sizes. We go from the human development stage. We start off as independent adults, say, who then have babies, possibly have babies. The babies are codependent. We socialize and train, manage and mentor them into and socialize them, and so that we become counter dependent because they rely on rules and regulations and social norms. And then it's supposed to go later on, they draw on their own tribe or are able to live in the community, which is intra-dependent. So independent, codependent, counter-dependent, and interdependent. And that is just reflected in everything that we do. So Tuckman's model of teams, forming, storming, norming, performing is the same sort of thing. Individuals form together as a work group. Storming as they start competing for the pecking order. Norming when they get some rules and regulations and goals and that kind of thing. And then performing is when they kind of lose that, but they embody what they're supposed to be doing. So yeah, connect, compete, control, and then to collaborate is where we want to end up. Archetypal hero's journey, Joseph Campbell, the hero ventures out. So we find this with business people, they venture out, they go through the trials and tribulations. The two pivotal points really that are really important. One is the refusal of the call, which we're kind of all getting to now, because we need to change. You guys on here obviously know it, but the world needs to change dramatically, and there's a refusal of the call. And what's really important, and what's another interesting part, is the refusal of the return, which is why we have so many of the problems that we have now. So when will he return? Well, what happens when someone is winning in the paradigm, their inner chump comes out, and people wonder, what is the return? Well, the return is when Luke Skywalker comes back and lives amongst their community and teaches them about the Force. All the heroes, heroic stories that you see is that the people come back. They've done this mighty adventure, and then they come back and help other people. That's what's supposed to happen. But we don't. We kind of get stuck in what I call half moon thinking, which is command and control. That means that we're paradigm blind to the other potential. But the thing is, command and control is very big in the leadership world, very big in management. But we only have to be in command and control about 5% of the time when you're under pressure. I've just been working with the fire service over here, and when I asked them, when do you actually need command and control? You do need it when there's an emergency situation, someone needs to take charge of a team. That's only about 5 or 10% of the time. The rest of the time, there needs to be creative collaboration, and we don't have those skills anymore, because that was when we were egalitarian. We need to develop this integrated perspective, but also understand creative collaboration is where we should be going. So facilitating and coaching, that kind of thing, needs to be more of our leadership style. And this is where it goes wrong. What's supposed to happen is this universal life cycle. Say a founder has I have a dream. This is what should happen. The entrepreneur, it's like my baby. They drive it forward. It's very codependent. We're relying on the entrepreneur to tell us what to do, and it's their force and their focus and their risk, their tolerance for risk that enables an entrepreneur to drive forward. We tend to call all business people entrepreneurs. It's not. Entrepreneurs are a very specific kind of personality. You can be a business owner and be any of these, but entrepreneurs drive things forward. Then the entrepreneur realizes that he needs more control. The ego is only scared of two things, or the inner chump, not getting what it wants, which drives the entrepreneur, and when they've got it, they're scared of losing it, which drives the manager. So this is where we need the manager wants to put, we call it the business, and we want to be counter dependent. We want to call it something, it's widgetized, and we're trying to do this to make it more controllable, because there's a command and control bit. And what's supposed to happen is then developing coaching. I know quite a few people quite a few of you are coaches and facilitators, but coaching as a leadership style, it's good if what should happen is that you then, the person who's got the business should then really pass it down. We talk about ownership. We're trying to engage people and get teams working and have ownership without actually giving them ownership. We give them all sorts of things, but we don't give them ownership. entrepreneurs say, oh, well, I took all the risk. Yeah, but that's your job. That's what your archetypal job is. That's what your DNA is for. Hunter-gatherers get around this by having stops, strategies to overcome power and things like that. But anyway, the coach is supposed to, the coaching stage is the interdependent stage, and then eventually it becomes their business. And the founder and entrepreneur can go on and do something else, but it becomes employed ownership, and employed ownership is going up. For that, you need this super team. So I'm ex-special forces, and I've been around the world setting up small teams. And whenever big organizations want to get something done, they set up, special project teams, elite teams, special forces, that kind of thing. And they're just the same as, super organisms, such as termites. We might be chimpanzees, but we're able to be highly collaborative, and we have shared purpose, and we share success. We're unhindered by bureaucracy. They're possibility focused, are always looking out for the optimal state. They're egalitarian, and they're very resourceful and resilient. So super teams tap back into our original, hunter-gatherer nature, if you like. In the UK, employee ownership sector has more than doubled in the past 3 years, smashing the 1,000 milestone for the first time. So if we want to bring more social justice, we want businesses to be more sustainable, then it's a good idea if we go back to this. And this is what, when we're talking about the American dream, the reason why the American dream, and it's not happened, is become a myth, and it's the same in the UK, in the capitalist world, is that all the wealth is flowing upwards, and it's not being redistributed. Hunter-gatherers, they have, as I say, these strategies to overcome power. And what they do, they when the hunter comes back with food, they use satire and things like that to stop the the hunter becoming too big for the boots, as it were, and to keep them humble and egalitarian, because they know that hierarchy and people having power is really bad for the ecosystem. So that's where I've got to with this bit. Do you want to ask some questions around that, Chris, about that stage?
Yeah, I just thank you so much, Martin, for this. I mean, I have just some clarifying questions that might help for everyone, and just for me too. Could you go back a couple slides to that one right there? You mentioned it in the hero's journey and Joseph Campbell's about that, not so much the resistance to the call, but then you said later the failure to return, and you used it again here. Could you unpack that more for all of us?
Yep.
You didn't really talk about that too much, so just share a little more there.
Okay, so whenever you introduce hierarchy, that's when the inner chump comes out. So that's the competitive and controlling. It's harmful to the ecosystem, and it's driven by unconscious bias, and it's motivated by fear and greed. And so what happens if there's only like 1 in 400 in the UK, 1 in 400 businesses that ever start and then get sold. So it's very competitive, and not an ideal situation. That it doesn't really work too well. But the people that do well out of it, instead of them sharing it and it becoming the American dream, it just gets focused, channeled up, because we go to command and control. We start being competitive and controlling. And what we do, we develop these things I call delusions, things that, like we're entitled, we're separate from the ecology and other people. It doesn't matter if we, damage nature and that kind of thing. I was going to go on to the next stage, which is to talk about how we make decisions, and that will explain that even further. But the return of the failure to return is when the entrepreneurs and managers, or the executives, or shareholders, or whatever, who have got ownership, they're not sharing the wealth. And so that creates big problems. And that's why we have boom and bust. So for the last 12,000 years, we've had boom and bust. And that's the reason why, is because obviously the wealth keeps going up and up and up, to the point where everyone else starves. The American dream's going because of that.
And the failure, yeah, well, and does the failure return, because you have the arrow pointing right to the chump. So is the failure to return also to return from when we drop back in because of fear, whatever, into control command, that we don't return to the full cycle? Is that what
Yeah.
you're saying? It
Yeah,
gets stopped. It's
we're
stopped.
not going to the full cycle. We're not
We're not
following the
going.
full.
Yeah, we kind of get stuck in command and control is what you're saying, and we don't return to our more evolved self, whatever, to then continue to move through the whole cycle.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're
All right.
we're not very good with the ecology check, which is the emotional intelligence. That's why we were talking about emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the green bit. It's, you know, it's where it's interdependent and that kind of thing. We just stick with the behavioral intelligence of get the job done, compete. If you look at it, as you're looking at it now, the top two are actually left brain thinking. And what Dr. Ian McGilchrist has written a great book about this after 10 years. And what he said that, you know, the left and right brain thing was all about, you know, am I creative or logical? It's not quite like that. The top two are the left brain, which is useful if you want to compete for something and to control it and to keep it. So you look at everything as a snapshot in time. There's no time. You look at everything as a map, but the map is not the reality. Okay, so all our models are created in the top two. The bottom two are your right brain, which is it can handle complexity. It can handle the reality, the messiness of being human. And you can't do it in the capitalist system. You have to keep everything as a map. And of course, that's where the problem is. Everything's a widget, but that's not what reality is. And that's why we have so many. So for the last 12,000 years, we have these boom and bust cycles, or war, revolution, that kind of thing. These are all strategies to overcome power. And if we don't follow the full cycle and just evolve, which is like the universal life cycle, then that's where the problem comes for society.
Thank you, Martin. Yeah, any other questions for Martin? And then we could go into sort of an open discussion, just flowing with this, or we could pose a question. But any other just sort of clarifying questions of Martin or anything you want to ask him?
Stunned.
I had a question, Martin. So I'm an entrepreneur, founder and entrepreneur, and we're at this stage of a small business where we're growing big enough, 14 people, so not huge, that we have to build some of these systems to help maintain that more management thing, right? So that when a new person comes in, they don't have to talk to the two people to know what's in the head. So I'm seeing where we are in this cycle, and something struck a nerve when you said, well, the entrepreneur's job is to take risk, right? I have taken a lot of risk over the last 14 years of my life. So what is the shift in thinking from entrepreneurial risk taking to management systematizing, which some of that stuff I don't honestly get excited about. I get more excited about the founding and the entrepreneurship. And then eventually around that corner to that coaching model, what shift in thinking has to occur as you round that?
I'm just actually, as you're talking, I'm looking for the, so what we're supposed to do is go into, there's so many slides here, sorry. What we're supposed to do is build autonomous teams, networked autonomous teams. And you find that you don't have to build a hierarchy as per se. You broke people down into dyads, didn't you, before? Small teams make, we always say the teamwork makes the dream work. No, small teams make the dream work. Okay, if you look at any special forces or any elite teams, special project teams, they're always small. When you get to 13, that's when you start having challenges, by the way. 13 and above, you really want to start breaking your teams down. And if you look at it, we can have one person just connecting with one person, and you correct, and you can have 5 teams. So one person can be the node between 5 teams, and the teams can work on their own. And there are lots of examples. I'm just trying to think of one in your country. Flight Desk, is it? Is there a company called Flight Desk Travel? Something like that?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Well, they operate in, I think it's tribes and families and communities or something like that. And that's the way we want to do it. We want to, we're designed to work in family size teams, 5 special forces work in 4 or 5. They can bring people together on bigger projects, but then they tend to break up. And then what you have to do, you have to then teach them to be self-managing. and I've developed the bit this, it would take a bit longer to explain it, but I've developed some really simple tools to help people make decisions. Would it be helpful if I showed you the decision-making model using that information that we've got there?
Sure. Yeah.
Do you want to do that one? Right,
Yeah.
you're on.
Yep.
This is Matthew. You hold that.
Matthew, who we can't see. There you are.
Hey,
Right,
Matthew.
We'll try do this. Okay. So as I said before, the 2v2 is like this. Okay, let's have a look, see if we can.
A little higher. Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
Oh, on we go here. No, you're gonna have to lift it. Right. So imagine this is social intelligence, this is behavioral intelligence, this is cognitive intelligence, this is emotional intelligence. Got that? You have to lift it higher.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so what we tend to do is this bit at the bottom is unpredictable, and this bit here is predictable. And if you're in business, what you want to do is make it as predictable as possible so you can stay in control and keep all the profits to yourself. This is unpredictable, and we don't like this bit. Okay, when I do it with teams and I give them something really crazy, make something out of some cardboard boxes and rubbish that I found outside. Some people, they feel nervous. And where do you feel it? In your adrenal glands, because you're scared of getting it wrong. So what happens anyway in the social bit? This is our senses. We come up with this is a big picture. We come up with ideas. Okay, we're trying to fix something. It's over here. This is a motivation or the mission. Okay, ideas. Okay, well, once we've got an idea, we quickly want to get from the unpredictable to the predictable. Quick, make a plan. So we make a plan of action. And what do we do with a plan of action? Any offers?
We execute it.
Action the plan, don't we? Action. Okay. Now then, the first right answer is never usually the best right answer. And also, we have a fear of stopping. Have you ever been to a restaurant? Oh no. Have you ever started watching a movie and it was rubbish in the first 10 minutes, but you carried on watching it to the end, hoping it might get better, and it never did? Does that sound familiar? Or you've been to a restaurant and started eating and it was rubbish service or whatever, and you've carried on to the end. Okay, so but because we're not very good at stopping or letting go of things, and a chump jumps in there because we've made it, and especially if you're in hierarchy, you can't be seen to doing the wrong thing. That's why politicians rarely change their mind. So what we do some more action. We find a symptomatic solution to the problem of it not working. Of course, then we need to carry on because well, now we're into sunk cost bias. And then we just carry on doing more and more action and it getting wrong. And that's how we end up in the Middle East for 20 years. We made the wrong decision and carried on and carried on and carried on and carried on. What's the bit that's missing? Emotional intelligence. Yeah, this is what I call the ecology check. All right. So what we're supposed to do is we've got a mission and we really want to know why we're doing that. Mission, purpose, come up with some ideas, but we know it's in the messy world of unpredictability, we can never have the right solution. The first answer is probably not the right answer. The first right answer is probably not the best right answer. So it's got to be emergent. So we start off with ideas, we make a plan of action. Instead of taking action, we go and ask the stakeholders. I call it the crap filter. What are the real consequences of this? What are the real costs? What are the assumptions you're making? And what do people on the planet think about it? If it passes that and you're still not sure it's going to be right, you take action, you commit. But then you straight away go back into this and you evaluate. And there's a little acronym called EDUCE I use there. EDUCE comes from the Latin meaning lead out potential. And it's evaluate, decide, understand, commit to either doing something or not doing something, committing to doing something, evaluate straight away, and then take action, all the rest of it. And so we go like that. And that's our infinite decision making, as opposed to making a policy or making a decision and thinking that's the right thing to do. So you're using all those four intelligences in a way. Now, if you're a person that reacts, you'll just jump in and react. You like to experience life. If you're someone who's socially intelligent, you like the ideas space. But if you can get a team of people to do this, facilitate this. This is where coaches and facilitation type leadership helps, and is probably what you should be doing most of. This is where it is. You facilitate, you make it easy for people to manage themselves by teaching them 3 core skills: how to make decisions, how to make good emerging decisions and know that it's not definitive, and how to collaborate powerfully, and how to be creatively brilliant. You need to teach them those 3 things. And once they can do that, they should be managing themselves because they're adults. Make sense?
Yeah, thank
Can
you.
you say those 3 things again that you need to teach people how to do?
3 core skills: make great decisions, be creatively brilliant. Everyone has great ideas, but the brilliance bit is actually being able to bring them together, because you've got to go through the life cycle to bring a product to the fore, and then collaborate powerfully. If people aren't aware, they'll be clashing. So the detailed person will clash with the big picture and so on. So that's why they need that collaborate powerfully and be self-aware. If you pay for my ticket, I'll come over and do it for you.
Cool, thank you.
Good.
Or you could buy a book. Buy the book. It's in there.
Questions. Let's open it as a free form space. I don't think we'll go into breakouts. So just any thoughts you're having that's emerging, questions of Martin, how this relates to your own leadership, your own work.
And maybe a question for me, Martin. I'm overwhelmed a bit with all the models you have, and I'm very intrigued. I'm checking. I'm assuming you have created them yourself, have you? Or
Yes.
But the help us. So, what's the purpose of it? So, maybe I missed the context setting. But so, how and when do you use them? When are they appropriate? So help me. How what I can do with it? Yeah.
Okay. So, what people have been using the book for is if they've got a business and they want to create these super teams, these teams that are based on our human way of working, which is collaborative, communing, and contributing to the whole. You can use these tools and this knowledge for that. People need to be more self-aware and understand their dark side as well. If you're a coach or a facilitator, it gives you some tools to be able to use that in a way which is quite useful, but also helps when you're teaching other teams. So that's the idea behind the book. The models, that was just my way of understanding why the world's messed up the way it is, and why, it's just helping in a very simple way, helping people understand why we're heading in the direction that we're heading, why that is, and what's the kind of evolutionary psychological reasons for that.
And what are your most popular or most successful, most impactful models then? What are the top 3 that work so well for you in relation to your clients?
Well, there's 2 models, and I'm not talked about the Mission Power model, but that's just I use that in coaching, planning, and that kind of thing. And it takes in the 4 things, the 4 intelligences. When what goes wrong in, go a bit like on the American myth, personal development, when people set a goal, they very rarely get the goal, do they? Because people quite often say, oh, get the goal. I know every time I've set a bloody goal, I've never hit it. I just, and I'm still trying to this day, even though I know the reason why it's not. And the reason why is we don't make decisions in isolation. When we understand this model and understand how actually we've got these 4 intelligences and we have to use them in an integrated way, then we can start understanding that, you're going to go so far and probably not get it and have to change your direction, that kind of thing. It kind of helps us be more accepting of the reality of a situation. Does that answer the question? Do you want to repeat the question? I don't know whether.
But you're the top 3 models.
Top 3. Well, the mission power one, the juice one, helps leaders think. A lot of leaders that have taught, business owners that have used, shown how to use it, they use it when they're solving problems for their client. They help the client go through the process of, okay, well, let's evaluate the options. Let's decide which is the best option, understand what the impacts or the fallout from that, the crap filter, and then also, okay, what we couldn't commit to doing. So the juice model works really well with that, with clients.
One thing that I've been learning and really listening and learning from Kathy Martin, and this is something that Frank brought up, and something that's about my own work on, my nature-based leadership design, is actually really checking and watching my language. That in fact, in kind of decolonializing my language of models, framework, model, framework, model. Even that, even though there's a joy in understanding that and what might happen there, there's also a box that creates. And so I've been, Kathy was really great. I don't know if you were on my presentation in July, but Kathy was really great about helping me reframe thinking from a living systems lens into in living systems in nature. It's all about design. It's like the design. And so what, I'm trying to work through my own mindset around a model or a framework I have into, there's this leadership development design that has a lot of fluidity and flexibility and
Absolutely, yeah.
and so I think, kind of to Frank's point, is a part of me with what you were sharing was like sort of overwhelmed by all the models of it, like, and you use them in
Yes.
different places and things in different times. But when I went into my work, I started thinking about the models, like even integral theory, right, Frank? Do you know about integral theory models and the spiral dynamics and stuff? It's so beautiful, it's so awesome, and it's so complex, and it's so modeled. So I've been trying to simplify and come from a place of a design structure. And I just wanted to see how you feel about that, Martin, as you look forward to your work, and how you use, quote unquote, the models versus some other way of interacting with teams. I mean, have you been thinking about that at all?
So there's a couple of, it's funny actually, there's someone that designed the Cynefin model. Do you know the Cynefin model? Cynefin?
I don't think so. I know
No, don't worry about it. But one of the things he says is the fact that people tend to skim over things and don't understand them. And you kind of have to understand it and then let it go. It's like everything else, isn't it? If you learn martial arts, you're doing lots of forms to start with, and then eventually it just flows. And that's the point. So you're following the same life cycle. You're unconsciously incompetent, all that sort of thing. And then you get to this, what you're basically doing is getting to this point of embodiment. And you really want to be like that. And it just flows, doesn't it? You're not trying to learn lots of models. The beauty of what I thought I'd done here, and of course, it sounds like it's lots of different models, but it's just three things. It's like people, life cycles, and this process of discovery.
Right.
And that's the design part that you're talking about. But what it does do, it does involve an ecology check, because people that invented hierarchy, kings, queens, all the things that we now know are myths, they started with a design framework of, I'll just design something and say, right, that's what it is. Whereas we're coming at this thing of, no, it's an ongoing evolutionary process that we're going through. And just, I think that you have to have a certain amount of self-awareness, otherwise you won't be aware of the dark side when you're going too far.
Yeah, that's the key. I think I like what you're saying, is this idea that we have structures and ways of thinking, and that as we understand them more deeply, we begin to let go of it being a model or a framework into seeing a deeper sense of what's needed in the space, or a sense of trusting more, or following the cycle more naturally, like you're saying. So I think I hear what you're saying about just
discovery, by the way. Sorry.
Discovery.
Yeah, I think, and keeping it sublimely simple, if you stick to those three things, we're all just discovering our way forward, aren't we? How you do that is, I would say it's useful if you use some sort of ecology check in your thinking. You already naturally do these things anyway. We're talking, it's like you've had a model put in front of you, but actually it's explaining how you think anyway. It's a reflection of what you are. So don't be overawed by the models, but just think about the fact that you have to understand people, what motivates us, and then also how we think and how perhaps you're thinking. Is there something that you're doing most of the time? Could it help be more, as you say, integral? yeah, we're kind of like pinching bits from everything, aren't we?
Yeah.
Spiral design.
Any final comments or questions, folks? We have just a couple more minutes and then we're going to wrap up and for today.
Sublimely simple, yeah.
I was,
I really, oh, go ahead.
No,
no,
go
I
ahead.
said, I talked earlier, so go ahead, whoever that was.
Okay, it's me, Lauren. I
Okay.
found it really interesting, Martin, when you were showing the decision-making model, how it's
Yeah.
the infinite loop. That's like that thing that Daniel showed us. That's like the way nature-based decision.
Adaptive cycle.
Yeah, adaptive cycle. I thought that was like a super interesting reflection of how even in something as complex as human interaction and leadership and hierarchy, you can still get that infinite feedback.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is that we don't like uncertainty. I mean, we talk about models and stuff like that. You think about the social economic systems that you're in, can't stand uncertainty unless they're gambling. And so we actually feel uncomfortable if we're in a hierarchical situation or a leadership situation where people are scared of getting things wrong. Well, how do you set up the environment so it's okay for them to get it wrong?
Fail fast, fail often, fail hard, right? That's the
That's the tech world for sure.
Yeah.
Also, and then Marianne, yeah, we've got a few minutes. Do you want to?
Oh, you know, I appreciated your putting in that the diagram being held by your trusty assistant there.
Matthew, yeah.
Where right, where are the four intelligences, and that's why I asked what was the fourth one. And then I found myself saying, you know, really kind of talking about what even Daniel was alluding to about cultural, you know, biases, et cetera, you know, and that there's cultural intelligence as another fifth intelligence. And then
it would be cultural. Okay, so when I talk about cultural intelligence, sorry to interrupt, but your culture is down to a combination of your ecology and the social systems that you're in. So it would be down here between the two. But yeah, go on, carry on. Sorry.
No, I was going to just say, in fact, I kind of went to, if one as a leader is using cognitive, emotional, social, and behavioral intelligence, in my opinion, then cultural intelligence is an outcome of those.
Yes, absolutely.
Basically.
Absolutely.
And if we could keep that in mind all along the way with the use of these as we're talking and doing leadership development.
Absolutely. You know, your relationships are down to the values that you have around relationships, aren't they?
Yeah. Self-aware. I really like that as a part as well. There's a lot of lack of that going on these days. Okay, I'll quit now.
That's great, Marianne. And Melanie, wow, that's do you want to share that quickly, Sherman and Tietmans?
Yeah, just where, you know, instead of sort of thinking about things in that sort of when we think about hierarchies and structures, we actually start thinking instead of the actual specific things, we think about the connections between the things. And just like you've been saying about relationships, those relationships become more important. So actually seeing things in terms of that rhizome of those connections across a web, rather than the actual just looking at the specifics. Like you said, Martin, you've got to name the specifics, you've got to know the specifics, but then actually once you know the specifics, it's understanding the relationships between those specifics.
Yeah. I quite often I take people on workshops, so we do a lot of this outside in nature anyway. So, and I use the metaphor of nature. One of the things I talk about is, you know, if you imagine a tree being, you know, its roots are in the ground, there's rhizomes connecting the trees. What should be the support is the leadership and the support, you know, systems, and it's taking information from the ground and upwards, and the product is on the outer reaches, and each branch is a team. And in hierarchical organizations, what people do, especially, you know, I've been working in the public sector and other organizations, they tend to get the tree and stick it upside down, and so the teams are actually supporting the leaders and the teams and that kind of thing. Yeah, and there's not much information. The information goes the wrong way. But yeah, interesting.
Great. Well, great sharing. Good points. Thank you so much, Martin, for the presentation. Great comments and shares, everyone. And it was nice to get a little bit of time and breakout with all of you. So let's see, Daniel, our next call is September 20th. Is that correct? September 20th.
September 20th, same time.
And be Daniel doing his summary and a deep dive for us, right, in the Inflation Reduction Act. Is that right? And then
Yeah.
how it applies to climate change and climate action and all that, right?
Yeah, and I'll look at it from a very specific, like how does this impact businesses, but also talk about it at that more social scale, right? Because some of us are not tuning in from the United States. So what does this mean globally? How might this impact or accelerate or catalyze or build momentum? So like always, I'll share some information that I can, and then it becomes an open conversation because you all have such valuable perspectives to share. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Great. Awesome. Thank you everyone for being here. Hopefully we'll see you September 20th and same time, same bat channel, same bat time, and we'll see you then. All right, everyone.
Be well.
Cheers.
Oh,
Thank you.
bye.
Yeah,
Bye,
bye.
Matthew.
Bye.